limb. We will discuss the anatomy of the large arteries and veins in the upper limb, and we will enlist and discuss their branches and anastomosis. Let's start with an overview of the arteries of the upper limb. Major arteries of the upper limb includes the axillary artery, which continue as brachial artery. Then this brachial artery is divided into radial artery and ulnar artery, and both radial and ulnar arteries will form the arches in the hand. First of all, the axillary artery starts as continuation of the subclavian artery at the outer border of the first rib. Axillary artery run in the axilla, and its termination at the distal border of the teres major muscle. It will continue as brachial artery. The brachial artery starts at the lower border or the distal border of teres major muscle. Then it will terminate at the level of the neck of radius by dividing into radial artery and ulnar artery. The radial artery will run in the forearm and enter the hand. Also, the ulnar artery will run in the forearm and enter the hand. The ulnar artery will form superficial palmar arch. However, the radial artery will form the deep palmar arch. Let's start with details. The axillary artery. The axillary artery, its origin is continuation of the subclavian artery at the outer border of the first rib. This is the axillary artery. It runs in the axilla. Its termination at the lower border of the teres major muscle. It will continue as brachial artery. Its course, as we have mentioned, it is run in the axilla. It is crossed anteriorly by pectoralis minor muscle, which divide this artery into three parts. This is the first part above the muscle or proximal to the muscle, second part deep to the muscle, and third part distal to the muscle. An overview about the relation of this artery. The relation of the second part is related to cords of brachial plexus. The lateral cord is lateral to the artery, the medial cord medial to the artery, and the posterior cord behind the artery. If we continue to the third part, the musculocutaneous nerve and the median nerve run lateral to the artery. Branches of the posterior cord, the radial and the axillary, run posterior to the artery. Branch of the medial cord, the ulnar artery and medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, run medial to the artery. Regarding the first part, the two cords, the lateral one and the lateral cord and the posterior cord, run lateral to the artery. However, the medial cord run medial to the artery. This is a musculocutaneous lateral to the artery, median nerve also lateral to the artery. Those are branches of the lateral cord. The ulnar artery, which is branch of the medial cord, run medial to the artery. The radial and the axillary nerve, which are branches of the posterior cord, run posterior to the artery. The medial nerve arises by two roots, lateral root and medial root, and here is the medial root cross in front of the artery. This is the detailed relation of the axillary artery. The first part is related anteriorly to pectoralis major muscle and covered by skin and fascia of the region. Posteriorly, it is related to the medial cord and long thoracic nerve, and laterally, it is related to the lateral cord and posterior cord of brachial plexus, and medially, it is related to the axillary vein. The second part anteriorly related to post-pectoralis muscle, pectoralis major and pectoralis minor muscle, and of course the skin and fascia. Posteriorly, it is related to posterior cord of the brachial plexus and part of the posterior wall of the axilla, the subscapularis muscle. Laterally, it is related to lateral cord, and medially related to medial cord and the axillary vein. So in the second part, the posterior cord lies posteriorly, lateral cord lies laterally, and medial cord lies medially. On the third part, anteriorly, it is related to pectoralis major muscle and medial root of median nerve. Posteriorly, it is related to branches of the posterior cord, the axillary nerve and the radial nerve, and the posterior wall of the axilla, which consists of a subscapularis muscle, latissimus dorsi, and teres major muscle. Laterally, it is related to branches of the lateral cord, the musculocutaneous nerve, and also the median nerve, which arise by two roots, one from the lateral cord and one from the medial cord. It is related to also lateral wall of the axilla formed by coracobrachialis muscle, biceps muscle, and humerus. Medially, it is related to axillary vein, branches of the medial cord, ulnar nerve, and medial cutaneous nerve of the arm. Regarding the branches of the axillary artery, the first part gives one branch, superior thoracic artery. The second part gives two branches, acromiothoracic artery, which pierces the clavipectoral fascia, and the lateral thoracic artery. The third part gives three branches, anterior circumflex humeral, posterior circumflex humeral arteries, which run around or form anastomosis around the surgical neck of the humerus, and also the subscapular artery. Let's move upward to acromiothoracic artery. Acromiothoracic artery pierces the clavipectoral fascia and gives four branches: acromial branch, pectoral branch, clavicular branch, and deltoid branch. And this deltoid branch run in the in the deltopectoral groove. The long thoracic artery runs along the inferior border of the pectoralis minor muscle, and it is very important in blood supply of the breast in females. The third part, as I have mentioned, gives anterior circumflex humeral and posterior circumflex humeral. This posterior circumflex humeral, to reach the back of the humerus, it will pass through the quadrangular space. The subscapular artery gives a branch called circumflex scapular artery, and this circumflex scapular artery here will go backward through the upper triangular space. Regarding the scapular anastomosis consists of branches from the third part of the subclavian artery, which is the dorsal scapular artery. Branches from the first part of subclavian artery, the suprascapular artery, and the deep branch of the transverse cervical artery. Branches of the third part of axillary artery, which are the circumflex scapular branch of the subscapular artery, and which enter the infraspinous fossa on the dorsal surface of the bone. Regarding the second artery, brachial artery. Brachial artery, it's beginning at the lower border of the teres major muscle as a continuation of axillary artery. First, it will run on the medial aspect of the forearm, then on the front of the forearm to enter the cubital fossa. Its termination at the level of the neck of the radius, it will divide into radial artery and ulnar artery. Along its course, it will be crossed by the median nerve and also the bicipital aponeurosis. And don't forget the important relation between the brachial artery and the tendon of the biceps. Tendon of biceps lies lateral to the artery. Its branches are superior ulnar collateral artery, which descends behind the medial epicondyle. The inferior ulnar collateral, which divide into two branches, one descend in front and one behind the medial epicondyle. The profunda brachii artery, which supply the back of the arm, and it will give nutrient artery to the humerus and of course muscular arteries. The profunda brachii is a branch which supply the back of the arm. It arises from the brachial artery. It will reach the back by passing through the lower triangular space. Then it will run in the spiral or radial groove with the radial nerve, and its termination it will divide into two descending branches. Its branches are two descending, one anterior descending and one posterior descending, behind and in front the lateral epicondyle. It will give ascending branch to share in the anastomosis around the surgical neck, and it will give also a nutrient artery to the humerus and muscular branches. Let's move to a hint about the radial artery. Radial artery, its origin arises from the brachial artery at the level of the neck of the radius. Its upper part is covered by brachioradialis muscle. Then it descends on the lateral side of the forearm in front of the lower end of the radius. Then it will run, the radial nerve lies lateral to it. Then it will enter the anatomical snuff box. Then to reach the dorsum of the hand. In the dorsum of the hand, it will pierce the first interosseous space by piercing two muscles, the adductor pollicis muscle and the first dorsal interosseous muscle, to return back to the palm of the hand. Its termination, it will form the deep palmar arch. Branches of the radial artery in the forearm, it will give three branches in the forearm. Those three branches are, the first one is radial recurrent branch. It will run in front of the lateral epicondyle. Palmar carpal artery, and it will share in the formation of the palmar carpal arch. Superficial palmar artery, and it will descend to the palm of the hand to share in the formation of superficial palmar arch. In the dorsum of the hand, it will give three branches here. One of them is dorsal carpal branch, which will give the dorsal carpal arch. Then it will give the first dorsal metacarpal, and the dorsal digital, first dorsal metacarpal, then it will give dorsal digital branch to the lateral side of the thumb. Then it will give 3 branches in the palm, princeps pollicis muscle, which divide into 2 arteries supplying the thumb, radialis indicis muscle, and the deep palmar arch. Then this deep palmar arch will give 3 branches, 3 palmar metacarpal arteries, 3 perforating arteries which communicate with the dorsal metacarpal arteries, and 1 recurrent branch which ascend upward to share in the formation of the palmar carpal arch. Regarding the ulnar artery arises from its origin from the brachial artery at the level of the neck of the radius. Its upper part is oblique and its lower part is vertical. The upper oblique part is covered by the superficial flexor group of extensor muscle, superficial flexor group. Then it will enter the hand by passing in front or superficial to the flexor retinaculum, lateral to the pisiform bone, and the ulnar nerve passes medial to it, or on its medial side. Its termination, it will form the superficial palmar arch. The branches are 2 recurrent, anterior ulnar recurrent and posterior ulnar recurrent. They will ascend upward, 1 in front and 1 behind the medial epicondyle of the humerus. It will give palmar carpal branch, and this palmar carpal branch will share in the formation of palmar carpal arch, and dorsal carpal branch to share in the formation of dorsal carpal arch. It will give common interosseous artery, which will divide into anterior and posterior interosseous. In the hand, it will form the superficial palmar arch, and it will give palmar digital branch to the medial side of the little finger. The common interosseous artery arises from the ulnar artery. It will divide into anterior interosseous and posterior interosseous. The anterior interosseous will run in front of the interosseous membrane with the anterior interosseous branch of the median nerve. Then it will pierce the interosseous membrane at the lower part to reach the back of the forearm. It will give median branch, and median branch run with the median nerve, and it will give nutrient artery to the radius and to the ulna. The posterior interosseous reaches the back by crossing above the posterior the interosseous membrane, and its branches, it will give interosseous recurrent, which ascend upward behind the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Now we will summarize the arches, arterial arches in the hand. There are 2 arches in the palm. One is called superficial palmar arch, and one is called deep palmar arch. The superficial palmar arch is formed mainly by the ulnar artery and superficial palmar branch of the radial artery. The deep palmar arch is formed mainly by the radial artery and the deep palmar branch of the ulnar artery. So in the palm, we have 2 arches, one superficial palmar arch formed mainly by the ulnar artery, one deep palmar arch formed mainly by the radial artery, and they are superficial and deep to the flexor tendons. So the superficial palmar arch is superficial to the flexor tendons. It lies about at the level of the outstretched thumb. The deep palmar arch is deep to the flexor tendons. In the carpal regions, we have 2 carpal arches, and each one of them is formed by one of the branches of the ulnar artery and one of the branches of the radial artery. These two arches are palmar carpal arch and dorsal carpal arch, and they are palmar and dorsal to the carpal bones. Those arteries will form anastomosis around the elbow and anastomosis around the wrist joints. Regarding veins of the upper limb, there are deep veins of the upper limb and superficial veins of the upper limb. Let's start with deep veins of the upper limb. The axillary vein. This axillary vein, which run on the medial aspect of, or on the medial side of the axillary artery, it is a continuation of the basilic vein at the lower border of the basilic vein at the lower border of the teres major muscle. Its course, it runs in the axilla medial to the axillary artery. Its termination at the outer border of the first rib, it will continue as subclavian vein. Its tributaries are, the main tributary is cephalic vein, after this vein piercing the clavipectoral fascia, and the vena comitans of the brachial artery. Regarding superficial veins, we have on the dorsum of the hand superficial palmar arch, and this superficial palmar arch drained laterally by one vein, cephalic vein, and medially by one vein, by another vein, basilic vein. The cephalic vein lies on the, it begins at the lateral side of the dorsal venous arch. It runs on the lateral side, then it will ascend upward in the deltopectoral groove, then it will pierce the clavipectoral fascia to terminate in the axillary vein. However, the basilic one, it starts or it begins at the medial side of the dorsal venous arch. It runs on the medial side, then at the middle at the level of insertion of coracobrachialis muscle, it will pierce the deep fascia, and it will continue as axillary vein. So this is an overview of the arteries of the upper limb, starting from the axillary artery, brachial artery, radial and ulnar artery, and the palmar arches. Regarding deep veins, axillary veins, and superficial vein, dorsal venous arch with its termination on the lateral side forming cephalic vein, and on the medial side forming basilar vein. Thank you.